fellas with me? I'll take your questions, maybe. If I run out of them. That probably don't happen anytime soon. This is his Facebook page. Check him out. Like it if you like it. Don't if you don't. Share or comment below. You know. You got to buy into all that stuff. Okay, let's turn this down. And then Mr. Oh, you can call him. Let's see. What do we call you? In your capacity, we could call you Mr. Mayor. We could call you Your Honor, Your Worship, Your Excellency on High. No. What are some of the other terms they call you when you're mayor? You're sitting in the chair of chair. I think that's different.
Hey, you.
Do you ever do you ever get your worship and go, no, I don't answer.
Yeah, not qualified.
Dave, thanks for your time today, man. I had a little help with backgrounder on you, and I didn't know you had your own business. Tell us a little bit about who Mayor Dave Bylsma is. And I'm saying it right? For the people
Bylsma.
Out there that's trying to get me to say Bylsma, it's not Bylsma.
You can do that too.
Okay. It's Dutch, right?
One is Dutch, one's a little bit more English. So if I'm talking to a Dutchman, they won't hear Bylsma unless I say Bylsma. So,
okay.
I don't care. I never have,
Tell us a little bit. What do you do offline when you're not wearing the chain of mayor or you're not performing your duties as a regional councilor? What's your life all about, Dave?
Yeah, so 20 years ago, a little bit more than 20 years ago, actually January Y2K, made the leap to start my own woodworking business. I'd been 6 years as a cabinet maker. So I guess all my life I've had jobs. When I worked as a kid on a fruit farm growing up, I wanted to start a fruit farm. Later on, I got into a greenhouse operation for about 4 or 5 winters. Thought about running my own greenhouse. When I had the opportunity to start my own business, I was cabinet making at the time. My employer was my brother-in-law. So another cabinet shop in the family was not going to be really beneficial for the family, I guess. So I decided to source him. I make kitchen cabinet doors. I work with real hardwoods: oak, maple, cherry, walnut, hickory, white oak. Yeah, and I make cabinet doors. So I have a small woodworking shop, a few employees. It's been surviving COVID. We're kind of a wholesale business, so we're a little bit immune to that kind of the front door type service.
Okay.
It's something that I've built up. It comes naturally to me. I enjoy it. I've done a lot of furniture for my family. These cupboards behind me and the door right here, behind us, I made those, in my own house. So there's spin-off benefits. Like I said, it's sometimes you want to throw the whole works into the ocean in the bottom pit. I have all that anxiety that you carry around as a businessman in my head all the time. Trying to find good employees and I have some, but trying to grow a business and yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about the business as far as like your commitment to the community inside the business. Do you have an underlying commitment that you carry through your business? I mean, you must have one in your role as a politician, but how does that translate to a businessman?
I think there's a lot of interface between politics and municipal council and the business community. So probably the best interface is just, I know how to speak the language. I know the anxiety. I know some of the challenges that people face with respect to planning issues, building a business, building permits. The permitting is complex. So there's a sympathetic ear when it comes to growing a business in a municipality. I understand the importance of infrastructures, whether that's municipal services or hydro services or logistics, roads, those kind of things. So there's some of that sympathy. There's also the sense that I'm a community-minded person. I try to take care of my business. Property is one that was pretty derelict 3.5 years ago when I bought it, but I feel a compunction to make it look neighborly and improve it. So there's landscapings around it now, and try to be corporate citizen that way. Of course, uh, I really feel the opportunity then to also be a corporate citizen in terms of community care and throwing down challenges. Not too long ago we had a coldest night of the year, and kind of throw a little bit of a challenge down to your employees and to your family, and not that you really talk smack or anything like that, but you try to inspire people to do their best in their businesses, in their respective communities, in their places. So, yeah, being a businessman, I really don't consider myself a businessman first. Um, I've always had that screensaver in my head has always been politics and policy, and for a very, very long time. So that's probably more my wiring inside my head. Although, like I said, I do love woodworking. So I guess the ability to do for your main employment or your main occupation, your hobby, that's a real blessing. You know, I've grown it. It started as a home-based business, so my family is a big part of the success of my business, I guess. Certainly, my wife is a large contributing factor to the bookwork and the organization and the kind of that office end of things. So she's on the computer here in the house, right behind me, actually, and she does a lot of communicating to my customer base. While I actually, my hands are full of slivers. Every night I dig out slivers. I'm hands-on guy. They're rough, they're marred, they're sometimes crunched, uh, but I guess it keeps me grounded as well, right? Political, maybe political life can be a little bit ivory tower.
Maybe for
I think
you.
each counselor tries to find. Yeah, well, maybe there's a disenfranchisement after a while. I don't know, but I think every counselor has a responsibility to stay grounded. They do that in various different ways. I'm sure that I you got to stay people of the earth. You got to stay connected. Representation. It's very easy to get out of touch. I think you see that in some of those maybe those communities. Maybe in the previous term of council, maybe there was a disconnect. I can't say I didn't really follow the politics at the regional council prior to the term in depth. I knew it was bad. I wanted to play a part in improving it, but maybe there was a disconnect. There were several long-term counselors that were uh, put to pasture, so to speak, and a fresh new lot came in. And I think that's just part of the ebb and flow of the political process. It's actually a wonderful part of Western democracy, and it's part of the things that I think we need to cherish and protect.
Yeah, amen.
So yeah.
I describe myself as a political addict. I can't look away. Uh, I was first drawn in by a friend of mine, Greg Vesna, who was advising the Green Party at the time. And in 1993, when Gibby Parent was still alive and Speaker of the House, I ran my first election. Scared straight. I did it on the idea that I wouldn't have to say a thing.
I ran in '93 too for the first time.
Yeah, only as a favor to a friend at 24 years old. Then I really got
I was
engaged with the left-wing platform, and I felt like they needed a voice. So in 2003, I came back and ran a whole slew of Green Party elections, into 2015. Then I started, my ideological shift started, where and the left started going crazy as far as I'm concerned. They weren't standing for free speech. Anyways, I'm rambling a little bit. Tell me why politics for you, Dave. Like, this is not, I don't run to get my name in the paper. I was scared straight the first time. I'm not certainly running because I see the pot at the end of the rainbow. I ran as Green Party. I'm never expecting to get elected. My positions were never popular. I was ridiculed like crazy until now it's fashionable. So I wonder, why put yourself in a position of power, also a position of criticism, but just why politics? What do you think it gives you access to?
It's the debate. It's the dialogue, the dialectic, and I think I have always enjoyed and been challenged by the public discourse. We have it in Western culture. I there are many who would differ, but I really don't think that they have ground to stand on in the sense that we are at a high watermark in history, or at least in the modern age, or maybe even if you go back to the ancients, all the way back to Rome and Greece. That idea that we govern through consensus, that consensus is done through conversation, through dialectic, through the dialogue, through the discussion, through debate. We sit in council chambers. There's plenty of people representing different ideologies, and we sit and we hash out public policy. When we attack that debate, and it's attacked a number of different ways. There's the kind of the Orwellian speak, the political correctness, and of course, that's certainly one. But when we use when we cheapen it, probably just using a limited vocabulary, we're treating it as something so wonderful, something so high-minded, with contempt. And really, the stakes are high. If we do not rule by consensus, if we do not rule through conversation, there's only one other way that we rule, and that's by force. And that's the natural state. That's the low level. That's where you fall to very easily. So for me, that dialogue is very important, to have a discussion, to be able to express oneself, maybe even a clunky sort of way, but to be able to express one's ideas based on their experience. We're going to find shared experience. We're going to find commonalities, but where we differ, we try to engage and have a vigorous debate. If we do not cherish that, if we do not love it and protect it and feed it, very quickly we move into a position where we're governed by force, where there's only one dialogue, where there's only one journalism, a propaganda, right? Like we understand the freedom of the press is a very valued part of that dialogue, the freedom of the press. If we have one-sided, state-sponsored press, then we're moving very, very quickly into that second category, being ruled by force, because we have no honest criticism of the ruling powers of those. So that ebb and flow, the criticism of the elected official, the criticism of myself, it's warranted. At the end of the day, I put out ideas. They enter the public discourse. They get batted around. I wish, personally, I wish people would cut out a lot of the vitriol, honestly. And hey, hi, Jim. Anyways, but if we have that honest debate where we're trading ideas in the public discourse, and it doesn't become personal. See, people don't know me. They don't know Dave Bylsma. You put up my Facebook page. That's my family. They all love me. They support me. They understand the Dave, that comes home at night, and he's a little bit stressed because, he's making the papers for all the wrong, for all the wrong ideas, for everything that he didn't want to convey, or it was a misrepresentation of what I'm trying to do, or and maybe, the media is as propaganda as it, doesn't want to be, or is trying not to be. I'm going to leave that for other debaters to debate. I have my own ideas on it. My point is, and the reason I've pursued politics, is that exchange of ideas. So classical liberal thought, the exchange of ideas, I embrace that. I think that truth comes out in a number of ways, but science is a big component of truth. But so is experience. We have to see things empirically. We have to see things also by experience. We have to also, I think there's a certain intuition or a gut feeling that also determines how someone comes to an idea of public discourse. The debates are long and they're tedious and they require work, but that's the cost, that vigilant cost to maintain this high standard of governance by consensus. it's Aristotelian. I mean, we can get into classical, thoughts and stuff like that. Most of history has not enjoyed it. Most of the world today does not enjoy it. China doesn't get this enjoyment. You know, it's in communist countries, dictatorships, people where there's coups, and they don't get to enjoy what we enjoy here. And so at the end of the day, that's my chief protectorate. That's and I do that for my family, for my peers, for my business colleagues, for my church family. It is. I guess on that front edge, we bear the slings and arrows uh, because of the what we feel is important as debaters, as people bringing ideas forward, which is why I really enjoy regional council. There's 31 councilors, 31 different ideas. It's totally appropriate to have a wide variety. If we were all the same thought, if we only allowed one thought on any issue, then we only need one person. And there you have the dictatorship. It's in that multiplicity, the multiplicity of experience, backgrounds, and in I mean, you run through the charter, ages and ethnic backgrounds and religions and gender, and all that needs to come into play to form what is that consensus. What is the consensus for Niagara? So yeah, the love of the debate.
Wow, bro. God bless you. Number one, a lot of respect. Carl Fuller just says on Facebook, good to get the homophobic word out. Bro, let's talk about the elephant in the room. You've taken this for a long time. There was a flap with the pride flag going up in your hometown, and then you were brought up with the integrity commissioner and censured, taken off committees. Talk to us about the two stories and how they actually played out, if you can, briefly. I'm not too.
Yeah.
We'll get into the impact on you and your family later, but just the logistics of what happened with the flag and then what happened at regional council.
It was, so it started with the taking up a vote for raising the pride flag in West Lincoln is probably the impetus. Although, I am who I am. I've established that across 30 odd years in politics. But my position was really simple. The Canadian flag represents everyone. And, I think the original point was against identity politics. But the funny part, it took on a new life, and that was regarding the comment, all lives matter. And, the Integrity Commission, there were 4 complaints that came forward. It ran its course. I never in a million years thought that all lives matter would be, determined by integrity commissioners to be out of bounds. It was. I fundamentally, and to this day, I don't apologize, haven't apologized, not because I'm a rude person or because I'm trying to create offense, but because I honestly believe it's fundamental to my faith, right? And I said that in the region. I felt a real pressure to try to make it all go away and try to make everybody love me again. But I have to be true to myself. I have to be true to my family, my faith, true to my constituents. There are many people who said words of support, saying, you did nothing wrong. I have to represent them as well. I have a responsibility to engage in the public. It was a painful process. The vitriol again, that dragging down of the discourse was a challenge, and I didn't want to hurt anyone. I didn't want to hurt I didn't want to put my fellow regional colleagues in the same position. But again, evidence suggests otherwise, and I presented that evidence even last month. The February meeting, I did do a follow-up and asked for evidence, and there was none presented. And I think that does speak, unfortunately, to the simple reality that I felt injured. I know there were other people that felt injured, but I'm sympathetic to that. But for me, it's about the discourse, about bringing into the public square this idea that we are a collection. We need to work together. We need to govern by consensus, and that's all people. That is all people.
Dude, I had someone really close to me last night come right into my studio and tell me I'm racist.
Yeah.
And this is, when a stranger tells you that, you laugh it off. I have no insecurity about my love and affection for all people. I don't care. I mean, I don't care who you are, what your skin color is, or how you pray. I truly don't. And it broke me. It absolutely broke me. And I'm trying to figure in my head, why does this bother me so much? Because if a stranger says it to me, I know it's not true, so I laugh it off. But this is somebody I should be able to go to that's got my back. And I'm handling a lot of hate mail right now. I don't feel good about it. It doesn't make me feel good that I am who I am, and that's not good enough in the public. I got a filthy mouth. I know guys like you don't appreciate it. I think I'm funny. I know I'm funny. Not everyone finds me funny. I get that. But tell me, who do you go to, or what do you do when the closest people in your life come to you and say, you're a pile of garbage?
Yeah. Well, I think there's probably the biggest insult is someone telling me I'm full of shit, someone that I'm full of crap, that I'm two-faced. That would probably be the biggest insult, because I live very consistently with my family, with my friends, with my church family, with my business partners. I'm a man of my word. I threw down the challenge. I've lived in this community for 50 years. Bring a charge. It wasn't bombast. It wasn't over the top. I am very thankful, I suppose, that nobody has told me that I'm full of crap. I feel like I'm full of crap. I have that. I play that constant dialogue in my own head.
Yeah.
I think we all do. We have a conversation between our mind and our conscience, and we say, you know what, that's inappropriate, thought pattern, or you're chasing that down. For me, the challenge is separating those things, those parts of us that we cannot change, against those things that are, part of our character. So for example, you mentioned, I don't care what your religion is, or your color, or your orientation, but don't lie to me. Lying is a virtue. It's a characteristic. It's a trait. Yeah, right. So, if you're a white person that lies to me, or a black person that lies to me, I don't like the lying. And you might come up with different reasons why I don't like you, but it's for the lying. If you're a lazy person, see, I there's not a day that I don't injure one of my fingers. Blood, sweat, tears builds a business, and long days. I'm up at 6:00. I got to feed pigs, and I gotta, that's how I start my day. I feed some pigs, not my children, actual pigs, and we collect sap. And I go off to work, and I work, somewhere around noon, depending on meeting schedules. And then I put on my mayor's hat, and I do interviews, and I work really, really hard. It really challenges me when someone comes and says, well, you've done pretty good for yourself. Or I'm not a self-made man. I know where my blessings come from. But having said that, we've created quite a covetous community where everybody's envious of their neighbor. They're looking sideways. Keep your head down, do honest day's work. There might be 7 days in 10 where it doesn't even get recognized, but 3 days out of 10, somebody's going, you know what? That person has character. That person is honest. They're punctual. They're hardworking. That is what you build a culture around, I know what it's like to be not working. You do lose a sense of groundedness. There's a certain perspective. There's a certain identity that comes through your work, through your actions, through your reputation. To have your reputation soiled, again, like you said, if somebody says something untrue about you, that or even if it's a misunderstanding, it hurts. It's not. That's not the good feeling. That's not the good part of what we do. But we press on. If we are truly the protectorates of the discourse, and I mean all of my regional councillors, all the elected officials of the land, I know I differ. It wouldn't surprise anybody if I said I differ with Trudeau and Doug Ford on many policy issues and such like that, or with my colleagues around the horseshoe. But I respect them. Every regional council that I work with, rub shoulders with, and my own council as well, we do have vigorous debates. And before COVID, it was not uncommon to share a meal. We had to do some workovers, right? 4 o'clock, share a meal, some pizza or whatever, stir fry was brought in, and then we conclude with regional. We sat, there was no tension in that room. People sat wherever they chose to sit, and everybody would just line up. And I would dare say, of all 31 councillors, I have sat between every one of them, having a conversation to my right and to my left and across the table. And there's a camaraderie, and there ought to be a camaraderie, and there's a high level of respect, because we're all in this together, and we all, I hope, have that ideal in mind where we're trying to find a consensus. And I trust the process. I like participating in that process. Again, it is something that is hard fought, probably only about 400 or 500 years, really in reality, where it emerged. The American Constitution, the Canadian Constitution, Magna Carta, those documents, they're only in their hundreds. Right. And we can't go to documents that are thousands of years old and say, we would really like to be governed this way, where you have, all authority in one emperor, or, in the military, or no dissent, no dissenting thought, no free press.
Mr. Mayor, I push back a little bit against the saying we're all in this together, because we're really not. Some of us are losing our homes and our jobs, access to our children. So, some of us are jumping out of windows. Some of us are hitting the bottle. Some of us are addicted to opioids. This is not a level playing field. I don't subscribe to the idea that, minorities and women are dying and more vulnerable. But I think what we've done, especially with the lockdowns and the masks, I think we've covered everyone with a blanket of pain. And, I think yes. Peterson speaks about, when you're in mental pain, you're not positive. You're lashing out. You're genocidal. You're murderous. And I think we've added a layer of pain to every single person in North America. Some more than others. Some are feeling it more than others. Some are used to being isolated. Some are out of their mind. There's elderly jumping out of old age home windows because they haven't seen their family in a year. The elderly committing suicide, that just doesn't happen. And I really appreciate you, referring to your children as pigs. I know I saw, no offense to your children or pigs, depending on what side you fall on, but I saw a video, I think it was on Get Off My Lawn recently, where this man called a TV station on himself because he was racist. And then when they interviewed him, he says, well, I make jokes. And the 12-year-old daughter says, yeah, his jokes aren't funny. What 12-year-old daughter hasn't thought their father was not funny? You're not funny to your children, right? But anyways, she was mixed race. And he said to her, during, a bad dancing lesson for the camera, well, that must be the white in you coming out because you got no rhythm. Yeah. Have we lost our sense of humor? Are we just so ultra sensitive now that we can't even joke with our own children? That's not racist. Sing.
No.
Like, I mean, if I had a mixed race kid, he would be getting black and white jokes or whatever race jokes all the time. That's all I would have for that kid.
Well, let's talk about this. We're all in this together, because I understand the sentiment. You know, there is a bit of a shared experience, and then there's a way where you know, some of us are doing better than others. You know, and that disparity, you know, again, that's part of that, you know, covetous or envious side looking. I think ultimately, you know, and I've also joined the Liberty Caucus. I think that lockdowns have done a terrible job of both containing the spread of COVID, and there's many of those unintended consequences. I think that there were ways, logistical and mechanical ways, where we could have maintained the humanity, the ability to share, to encourage, to dump, to vent. You know, like every night, you know, I come home to a vigorous table. By, you know, through natural processes, I have a big kitchen table. We exceed all the, unfortunately for Doug Ford, we exceed, you know, the allowable inside, because we're already 11 people, and
wow,
you know, 9 around the table, you know,
Wow.
or 9 kids around the table. But
Jeez.
I'll tell you, that goes a long way to that sanity. And I'm gonna confess right here, right now, you know, I'm sure you're recording this. We bring in single friends that don't have that experience, and we sat them right in the middle of our table. They don't sit on my end close to me where we can have a little sidebar. They sit, you know, kind of 3/4 of the way down, where they're compelled to pass the buns and the butter and the salt and pepper like everyone else.
Awesome.
They're compelled to yell a little louder. They're compelled to fend for themselves, because I have, you know, 3 teenage boys, 16, 18, and 20. And well, I guess 20 is no longer. He just had his birthday last week, so okay, there we go. If you don't get your hand in there, you're going home hungry. I'm gonna have to feed you like crackers from the cupboard, because it doesn't matter how much I put on there, and we heap up a table. But the point being, I have been blessed with an abundance. From that abundance, I share. So we try as much as possible to get single friends and couples and around our table. And you know, it's memorable. I guess it is memorable. For me, it's no big deal, but I recognize that I've been blessed. So, you know, I think that's where, you know, that network, you know, getting out beyond yourself, trying to find those people caught in the cracks, caught in the corners. I have counseled some young men recently. You know, they're really, really struggling. There's a tension, so they just get so angry. You know, and I know the impetus is always, you know, the usual suspects. You know, difficulty with a child, difficulty with a wife, difficulty with a job, difficulty with a husband, difficulty with, you know, a boss, difficulty with me, and the tensions, the heat's right there, and just, hey, you know what, like, we need to find places to vent. We need people that hold us accountable, people that check in on us. You know, we're so good at putting on a facade, but we're vulnerable. All of us are vulnerable underneath, and there are times when we need to get into those vulnerable spots. And I'm blessed with a faithful wife, and you know, she's not only my lover, but she's my best friend. And you know, she knows what I feel, and to a certain extent, I really feel bad for her, because she has to kind of bear me up, and that's not a spot that you know like to admit. I guess I'm doing this on recording. You know, like that you're vulnerable, that you're not. You don't have all the answers. I've never once insinuated that I have all my ducks in a row. You know, I got the challenges of life as well. Having said that, I also, you know, put myself in spots where you're accountable. I have a posse. You know, I guess it's a political posse. We met a lot, in the last year. You know, I did the NPCA thing. I think that's when it formed, when I was getting the boot from the chairmanship of the NPCA a year ago. After all that hard work, we righted the ship. We made an accountable organization. That's what I do. Treat people honestly. We had to part ways with some with an old board, and we had to, but we treated people with honesty, with respect. And we had no callbacks, no warranty work after. When we were done, we were able to move forward very cleanly, somewhere around the 6 to 9 month mark. And by the end of the year, we were really catching our stride. We had some really, really neat things that happened just prior to COVID. That was probably the most challenging thing I've ever done. And I formed a posse, and we're vulnerable. Usually there's a little bit of alcohol and some cigars that come out as well and try to get you into that mellow spot. But I think it just speaks to the fact that none of us are islands unto ourselves. When I say we're all in this together, I hope we're all in this together, but I recognize, or that's my dream, that we're all in this together, that we're all have each other's back. In West Lincoln, we do a really, really good job. Our charities are just overwhelmed with love and generosity. Our charities in West Lincoln are doing very, very well. Gleaners, Community Care, they've had record numbers. When we did extra things to try to have people's back, it was there. So I think that's an indication where we are all in this together. We are trying to have each other's back, and I understand those challenges, but all you have to do is reach out. And I know it's hard to do, but you have to kind of express that vulnerability and let someone in. If anybody here wants to know what that's like, just, message me afterwards, whatever. I mean, ring me up. Yeah.
Can I give you your cell phone number?
Dave, it's on the website.
Yeah, cool. Dave, I appreciate your time. Listen, talk to me about the impact of Councillor Sendzik standing up and saying that you're dog whistling for white supremacists, or when Laura Yip stands up and says, as a white person, by virtue of the system, even anti-racist or racist. Just tell us, how do you feel personally when a Walter Sendzik stands up and says you're a dog whistle for white supremacy? Like, that's a huge accusation, and he seems to just throw it around flippantly without regard for the impact. Like, you just don't go around calling people Nazis or white supremacists. It doesn't solve anything. So I'm just interested in how that lands on you.
So that's part of that. I think it's part of what we've created. The virtue signaling. They were, all the councillors were trying to put a bit of a distance between my comments and my understanding and my belief and themselves. That's, is it high school? It could be, it could be high school all over again. Walter did call me the next day, and I think he felt compelled to reach out to me. We did talk about it within a couple of days.
Oh, really? That's impressive. And I wouldn't have expected that.
My challenge to him, and my challenge, at the end of that evening, after he had said that in the evening, and my challenge a month later, and my challenge to him was, look, we produced evidence. My lawyer that did represent me in his communications to the Integrity Commissioner provided evidences of people like Candace Owens, Morgan Freeman. I think there's governor of one of the Carolinas or Virginias that he's a black man, but he wants nothing to do with the Black Lives Matter movement. And they're countless. There are hundreds of even rappers and actors who we provided evidence. We gave hard evidence that this is part of public discourse. I asked for evidence about, to back up that this is a dog whistle. Mm-hmm. Just saying it doesn't make it so. Right. And so is there an image on of the Proud Boys, but they're holding up All Lives Matter? Is there a motto in the Ku Klux Klan that says All Lives Matter? Is there saying it is doesn't make it so. Mm-hmm. And that was my point. I think you know what? I don't want to single out Councillor Senzik or Councillor Yip, because I think all the councillors took their turn. I think after a while, part of the virtue signaling is what they all had to say something. And I think, my fellow councillor, Councillor Diodati, probably had the only olive branch of the evening when he said this is a bit of a goose pile. And that's how I felt. But these are people that I respect. And I think that they're part of that thing that I so cherish, which is the dialogue. We don't see eye to eye. I was hoping for something a little bit more concrete before you go down that road of guilt by association. You have to understand where each person's are coming. Anytime we talk to somebody, we're sharing a piece of our reputation with theirs. And Jim, even the lead up to this, we know that there was some press about me coming on this show, and other people. I know you've had many people. We're sharing reputations. We're bumping up our reputations against each other, and that's not something that we should be afraid of. There are people who I disagree with a whole lot more that I've been on in an interview with, and both of our reputations are bumping up against each other, and there's a dialogue. I guess it all depends on how we respond going forward. Does some of my reputation or some of what I'm trying to say, does that rub off on Jim Fannon and some of what Jim Fannon's trying to express, or you're an interviewer, but if we're two people in the same debate, equals or experts in a particular field, but on opposite ends, is there a compromise? Is there a consensus that forms? Is there common ground? I find common ground, that's always a great place to start any conversation. Common ground. I found common ground with every councillor that I have around the table. One of probably the drawbacks, and there's a bit of a confession here, but regional councillors in these COVID days especially, but even prior, because of the advent of cell phones and stuff like that, you can sometimes just send a funny text across, a thumbs up and a bravo and well said, those kind of things, little encouragements and stuff like that. I think every one of my colleagues will know if they look through their phones, if I agree with something that they say, I don't need to go out and publicly say, they said it good and they said it good. It's all part of the dialogue. But privately, they know that I'll give them a thumbs up and say, like well said, I appreciate that. Common ground. And sometimes we vote differently and sometimes we don't. But this interview, I can't stress it enough. I mean, our dialogue, our discourse, that dialectic, that's very precious. It's precious to our democracy, and we need to protect it. And we need to, I think after all is said and done, with that whole discourse, and this is where I'm going to disagree with Councillor Senzik and Councillor Yip, and say, I think free speech lost that evening a little bit. They're not the killers of it. Maybe they tapped one nail closer in the coffin on free speech, but in a small way. I hope that that debate doesn't form a precedent for other municipalities. In terms of integrity commissioner, there's some technical issues there that I had a problem with too. I let it go. There's a sense in which sometimes you just gotta let time vindicate you. You can't go after every grievance. Like you said, water off a duck's back. There's a lot of things that you let slide. I chose to let those comments by my colleagues. I tried not to remember any of them. I know they were passionate, and as was I. And I kind of came out of that meeting a little bit numb. 2.5 hours being berated by your colleagues, that does numb the brain a little bit. And there was a lot of emotion, certainly. There was an injury. I've said it before, but there was an injury to my conscience. I walked out of there. I couldn't hardly recollect any of them. I just tried not to, because I have to work. I have to work with my colleagues. I really do. And I chose instead to work and to move on. I've Councillor Senzik, I've had lots of communications with him since on other issues, and I think even at the public health meeting there, we tended to be on the same page with respect to issues of public health and the lockdowns and the challenge we face as councillors with a constituency that's dying. Restaurants are dying and businesses are dying, and we just can't go further in this. We have to find another solution there. We have to do the hard work of finding a different solution, a different plan approach on mitigating the spread of COVID. So those are choices that everyone makes. They can become a victim, right? They can always look at the cup half empty, or who's done what, or who's saying that. Don't obsess over that. Probably getting onto Facebook was the stupidest thing I ever did. I was compelled into it. Said, hey, you need to get in touch with your constituents, which is true, but it's a bad form of getting in touch with your constituents.
And you lose that human connectedness. You forget that the person you're dealing with on the other side is a human being. We don't say these things in the presence of of each other.
And vocabulary is lost.
That.
Yeah. Vocabulary is just non-existent in Facebook world. Emojis. At the very least, emojis might be the only saving grace about texting and Facebook. You can kind of put an emoji on something that kind of gives you a little bit of if it's a smiley face or a chuckle,
that gets you blocked.
Hear the sarcasm.
No.
But vocabulary, you type out some of these 5-syllable words, and there's no suggestion from the smartphone to say, where the heck are you going with this word? I've never seen. It's not in my dictionary.
Dave, what issues are you passionate about? I seem to be drawn towards these false narratives since my red pilling over the last 5 years. White cops are not actually indiscriminately hunting down black people. It's just the FBI death stats for unarmed police killings is actually double for white men than it is for black men. Bad things happen. I'm not saying racism doesn't happen. I think I was listening to Crowder today. Here's another hate fact you don't want to talk about, or maybe you don't have a problem with it, but there is a disproportionate number, less than 2% of the population. I'm going to say the demographic, but they're responsible for over 50% of the violent crimes. Let's leave race out of it. If you have an underlying common thread, first, they're all men, okay? Females aren't wired for that kind of nonsense. Men are aggressive as a result of being men, testosterone. They're also driven to madness and obsession more than women. I think women are probably more prone to depression and emotional pain than men are. So for me, fatherlessness, without a doubt, we killed God, I get that. Nietzsche wasn't, he was lamenting it. He wasn't celebrating it. I think we're paying a cost for that. There's scientific, non-disputed data that the traditional family home, the nuclear family, is the most successful for children. That's fact. So for me, I was not surprised to learn, but confirmed my own belief already. The underlying factor in the almost 100% of the murderers are my father left when I was a kid. My father's gone. It's almost 100%.
Right. Look, I've been in politics for 30 years. I've run for the Christian Heritage Party. No secret. It's all out there. It's all on Facebook. Never had to hide it, and I never would apologize for that. But as a social conservative, in 1993, there were issues. There were social conservative issues that were on the debate where I was saying we can't go down this road because it will have detrimental effects on the family. And then, in 97, I ran, in 2000, 2004, 2005, 2007, and on, and it goes. Every time there were issues, there were social conservative issues. And I was, brought up in a pro-life family. Obviously, I have lots of kids. I'm very pro-life. There's a sense in which, as a social conservative, we said, if you do this, legalization of drugs and to all I was on a committee that fought the casinos coming into Niagara Falls before they were. I was there.
Wow.
With a concerned citizens group saying that if we do this, it'll be detrimental for the family. Each one of those, maybe you can't discern it, but across time, even more recently, the legalization of pot and the decriminalization of all drugs, hard drugs, this is something, a letter that was put forward. Each one of those erodes that. And we've touched on it. Family, family, family. What do you have in family but accountability? You have encouragements, opportunities to vent. You have strengthening of character, through those accountabilities, through those encouragements. Denzel Washington, I'm a fan of Denzel Washington. He has quite an interview where he says basically him and his best friend growing up, identical situations in terms of they were on the same street and they went to the same school and all these kind of things. Denzel Washington became Denzel Washington, household word, household name, well known. His friend didn't do so well, and Denzel says the only reason that he can see is his dad. His dad. That's all he says. His dad. And basically, isn't that the truth, that we've had a dad at very key points who stood in there, for us men, like you said, who say you have all this strength and you have all this passion. You need to focus that. You need to focus that towards providing, for skill setting, for developing a reputation of both a person, a character of strength, not just physical, like that's just a picture of doing this, but of personal strength, toward a noble end, toward something that is of merit, something that because of that, you give more than you need. You're not just trying to meet your own cup full, but out of that overflow you share with others, right? That's done in families. And it is ironic, I guess, that after all these years, and the social conservatives, usually spearheaded by Christian organizations, but the social conservatives have in history have said, if you do this, it will be detrimental to this, and it will be, you'll see increase of violence and increase in mental health issues and so on and so forth. But the social conservatives are also there. Instead of saying, we told you so, they come with the charities. They're the ones doing the charities. Habitat for Humanity, it's a Christian organization. The Y, the C in the YMCA is Christian. Salvation Army. They're the ones that are trying to help those with addictions, trying to help those with mental health issues, crisis pregnancy. They're trying to help. Alcoholism, whatever the social ill is, Christians have lined up to also be charitable there, because is it a testimony? Is it a witness? Perhaps it's not our primary thing, but to say that when you have families and dads that stay home and take responsibility in the home, and I understand that there's marital breakdowns and such like that, but if we understand what the ideal is, then we can get back to what understanding when things go off the rails, where they went off the rails, and try in a small way to start to patch these things together. I don't, the task is big, but I've strived for many years to live that ideal in my own family, right? It's large. We eat. We eat all of our meals, like all of our suppers we eat together.
Wow, powerful. Every
day around one table. And my son, I have a son that works in a quail farm, and I have a son that works in a plumber, and he's a plumber, and I have school-age children that are doing homeschooling, and the whole gamut, and they all come around the table, and everybody's yelling out their experiences of that day. Little download for everybody, and there's funny stories. Everyone, even the youngest, has commentary that makes you laugh, right? How important is that? I don't want to be critical, But to me, that's a touchstone. That's an indication of a good family aroma.
And it's
Where
missing
if somebody
too. It's missing from most families right now. I mean, I had
turn off the TV, honestly.
I hung around a girl for less than a summer, and I remember texting my brother a few years ago going, dude, I've had 3 weeks of dinner at the table with the kids. It's awesome. He goes, you're just like your father. I'm like, what? I mean, I hear that all the time. I got the same name. I'm like his clone, but different. And he says, oh, yeah, your father. Like, that was so important, your father. It was dinner, conversation, what's up, we're encouraged to talk. Now, I didn't have the perfect upbringing. My father wasn't a perfect man, still isn't. Thank God he's still around. Love him to death. He absolutely hates what I do. I told him I was thinking of running the first time. Why would you want to do that, Jimmy? What? At first it was, the Green Party's kind of embarrassing your whole family. And then now it's like they're going to dig up all your garbage. Like, why do you keep doing this? He literally puts me on mute on Facebook so he doesn't have to see what what people say mean things about. I mean, I say mean things about people all the time. I'm not perfect. I'm getting better though. Anyways, I want to keep you on time. I wanted to get into the perversion of, like, we seem to be normalizing perversion in so many ways. We got drag queen story hour for kids that are way too young, in my opinion. This idea of sex doesn't matter. You can have it out of wedlock. It's not sacred anymore. Women have come a long way, thank God, to the birth control pill, so they can time exactly, when they're having children and when they're not, and their cycles and stuff like this. I'm not saying that's a perversion, but it seems like we're so far gone. How do we hold on to our traditions without seeming to be inflexible? How do we hold on to these institutions that have worked for a millennia without saying, well, no, we got to be tolerant to single mothers. And in fact, they're encouraging divorce by not giving welfare to people with men in the house in the States.
It's actually quite simple. At some level, it requires personal honesty. Everybody listening to the broadcast, or people in society, all they have to do is do a quick audit of their own life. Are you happy with your job? Are you advancing? I think Jordan Peterson, I'm a big fan of Jordan Peterson. He talks about, making those small steps. When you get a job that you get a little bit of extra money and you can make choices about those, you get to the point where not only are you paying your bills, but you can make choices about some of that surplus that you need, and you make choices towards charity, or you make choices to build up your position. And then after a while, you get into a position where you can share with others, both of your shared experience, and again, iron sharpens iron. You can kind of cross-reference and such. But we do that, that self-assessment. We look at, well, what are the parts that we like, and then we, let's be honest again and say, is there somebody in our history, a grandfather, an uncle, where you might say, I like what he did with his life, a mentor, right? And you communicate with that person. See, one of the beautiful things about eating around all together at a family, I have an 8-year-old at the table. I have sometimes grandchildren at the table.
Cool.
I have a third one's on the way. I have a 20-year-old and a 23-year-old at the table. Wow. And they interact seamlessly with each other. The older ones know how to kind of guard the conversation because there's younger ones at the table. We know that. We know that thing. We share, and because we want to protect their ears. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, there's also some of that, that banter that goes back and forth. Grandfathers, grandmothers, they all come. I have, thankfully, that all my parents and my in-laws are all intact. And so there's four elderly people that my kids get to interact with and engage with. That connectivity is natural in a family. You're going to come across multiple mentors, multiple people who can influence you for positive. You say, I like how he ran his business, but I like how he does his education or whatever, or how he takes care of his family because they have maybe a unique circumstance. Mm-hmm. But everybody doing a self-assessment, if they're honest with themselves, and then look out and find mentors and communicate, become close to those mentors, become a little vulnerable with them. And over time, there will be, and I'll say this as a caveat, every mentor at some point will let you down, because they have their own struggles. And I am certainly, like my kids know me better, right? So I like to think that I'm their mentor.
Don't build the podium too high, because then the fall is fatal.
At the end of the day, we learn, finding that shared experience, finding what works, looking sideways. And for me, I'm going to conclude with this, because I think we've reached our hour. For me, the ultimate mentor is my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I am a Christian, born and raised as a Christian. I had my struggles in university about that identity, but for me, that's my number one identity. And it forms the nucleus. Do I do that perfectly? Well, I'll let the citizens of the region judge that. I'm judged all the time, but my family, they keep me in check, and as do my elders and pastors and brothers and sisters in the Lord. So
we just hit an hour. I'll decide when this interview's over. Thank you very much. Just on the way out, Dave, I'm interested. Any regrets? Anything you want to take responsibility for the impact of your actions? Anything you want to invent for yourself moving forward? And part 2, in your close, what's your message of hope in a really strange time?
What do I regrets? I guard my words very carefully. Choose my words very carefully. I don't, in terms of those things, those chief things, at least in my political career, I have life regrets. I'm going to keep them to myself right now. That my wife knows those, and we'll keep it there.
Say hello to your wife for me. Thank you. Right? Thank you for being the strength in this man's life. I mean, they call me misogynistic, but I will admit that no great man ever, an inventor or genius of any type, didn't do it for the love of a woman. Dummies.
Yeah, sure. What's my hope? My hope is that even in the midst of all this social media crap, that there is a form of dialogue and discourse that is being engaged. It's too easy to dismiss all of Facebook world and all of, I don't tweet, I don't have Instagram, but I can see a level of merit, because what it has done is made our experience a lot more global. Like I'm sharing on a daily basis with people, Messenger from BC, and like today was BC and Windsor, and I have a friend just across in Gatineau, and we're encouraging each other. I don't have to just go to my next door neighbor, although he's my friend as well. And I'm friends with all my neighbors. At the end of the day, we can kind of nuance things from a wide range of people. Actually, I have, regularly interact with a guy from Pakistan. There's no way we would have ever met except through this Facebook thing. So again, probably the battle is for that dialogue, and it's so important, because if we don't have that discourse and that dialogue, we quickly move toward, force. The only way to govern after that is force.
Midnight on Twitch. I want to just acknowledge you. Sorry, we're going to get to your question. I'll send you the link off line. He wanted you to comment on it. Dave, thank you very much for everything you're doing. I love you. I find you to be honest. I think your integrity's pretty much in check. We're never perfect in that department. Inspiring. I look up to your strength. I'm very happy that you took a stand and said, no, I'm going to talk to Jimmy Fannon. We've talked before. I know that was a lot of pressure for you. Same to Jim Diodati. I'm speaking to him tomorrow in a pre-interview. I think you guys got pretty smart about it, and you're like, wait a second. I might want to talk to Jimmy before we... I mean, this is no different than the last interview we did. Maybe I spent less time talking about me. I have a hard time doing that. But I just want to acknowledge you. You've made a difference for me in my life just by your leadership out there. We're watching you everywhere. You know that. That's not threatening. It's just, and I think you have a higher responsibility to the Creator that you feel like you're going to be responsible for later. I personally don't feel I'm good enough to make it that far. I think I'll take the fire pole to hell. I don't know. Peter keeps coming back in my mind, this idea like, there's nothing good in me. The only good, like I had a conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and it absolutely flattened them to tears. I'm good at getting in people's head and helping them. And all I could say was, that wasn't me. Those words were truth that I knew about you right then and there, but that doesn't come from me. That is a gift, and I can't explain where it came from. So, brother, I appreciate you. I'm really happy to talk to you and give you a platform in long form where you're not going to be cut off or spun. Matt Holmes laughed you off the set the other day. I just listened to it, or I don't know, whenever that interview was. It was sad to hear that an expression of faith and belief from a man that thinks all lives matter. Like, how can that? Like, oh my gosh. Anyway, I appreciate you, brother, and I really appreciate the time that you spent with me today. Give my best to your wife and the kids. I love you all, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, my brother. All right, we'll talk soon. Bye-bye. Thanks, Dave. Mayor Dave Bylsma. Did I get it right? Bylsma? Bylsma. You can say it both. You can say it the Dutch way. Bylsma. Then the Dutch people know what you're talking about. Let's see here. Let me just get you out of here. We'll end this. I'm going to say goodbye to you, Dave. And no, I can't see.
All right, I'm going to leave.
All
See
right.
ya.
Peace out, yo. That's Dave Bylsma. Mayor Dave Bylsma. Councillor Dave Bylsma at the Niagara region. Well, that's it. I mean, what more can I tell you? I can't tell you anything more that he didn't say himself as far as taking responsibility, what happened, what he's committed to. I don't know. Decent conversation. I don't feel like I was misogynistic, hate-filled, bigot. But you can make that decision for yourself. Trew.Tube is up and running. It's not exactly what it's supposed to be yet. Man, I've got 2 Patreons now, patrons, 2 people that are giving me money for every creation. I haven't figured out how I'm going to work the Patreon account. And I got a donation. I told a buddy of mine the other day, and I need about $1,500 to finish this website so I can broadcast from it and house my library of interviews there without the fear of censorship. And dude said to me, I'll send you $500 next week. My web guy is going insane. He's like, Jimmy, he's got the money spent already. So, hey, if you like what you hear, you find it semi-entertaining, Real Estate at Team Niagara on PayPal. You can send it to me directly. You can subscribe to me on Patreon. It's patreon.com/free speech. Yeah, that's me. Patreon.com/free speech. And, well, if you want to get a hold of me any other way, you know the digits. You know the email. And that's all I got for you. Peace, love, for crying out loud. Go hug your neighbor. And please, please take that filthy diaper off your face. The children want to see your smile. Other human beings want to see your smile. It's not protecting anyone. Cough into your elbow. Keep your 6 feet of distance and stop complying. Please defy and do not comply. I